Thank you to all the members of the channel. You guys motivate me in creating content every day. If you want to be featured at the beginning of every video, consider joining the channel as a member. It's a great way to support me, and it also gets awesome perks like emotes and a special role in our Discord. And now we can be like all the cool Twitch streamers and say, hey guys, now everyone say hi YouTube, because this is going to be a YouTube video. What's up guys? Welcome to another video. Today I have a build guide for patch 14.5 for Lillia. I've been playing a lot of games, and I managed to hit Masters 150 LP on EU West with 140 ping and a 79% win rate. I've had a lot of success with this current build, and I thought it'd be worth to share with you guys because it's a little bit different than the default Lillia build, right? And so I'm gonna get into all the items and explain why I think each item is good. First of all, we have Liandry's as the first item because it's the core item for Lillia and it's always good. It's just her best item. It synergizes well with her passive, which enables her to do a lot of damage and stay in fights for longer, stacking the Conqueror. It's really good. Now for the controversial item, my second item is actually not Riftmaker. And most people build Riftmaker, but I actually do not think Riftmaker feels that good anymore, especially after the Lillia nerfs. I think that getting to Liandry's Riftmaker isn't as realistic as it used to be, and I don't think the damage is worth it, because instead of building Riftmaker, I like to build Rylai's now as my second item, because Rylai's cost 500 gold cheaper. Rylai's costs 500 gold less than Riftmaker, which means that every time you build Rylai's instead of Riftmaker, you're actually 500 gold closer to your next item. And your next item is usually like Frozen Heart, Banshees, or Zhonya's, which are all items that could break the game. Zhonya's is one of Lillia's best items for making plays, so I believe that being 500 gold closer to that item instead of getting like extra small amount of damage from Riftmaker is worth building Rylai's. Because I actually think that Rylai's passive impacts the game more than Riftmaker's passive does. There are still like a few cases where you could still build Riftmaker. I think it's really good into really heavy melee tank bruiser team compositions that you can kind of drain tank your way through. But at that point, most games won't look like that. So I will most of the time now be building Rylai's as my second item, and I encourage all of you guys to try it because it feels really good and it just enables you to snowball a little bit harder in some games. Now, for my boots, I think that to explain the item chart a little bit more in depth, the top row is items that I think you should build if your game is going fantastic. If your game is going great and you're snowballing and there's not a lot of threats on the enemy team, you're just coasting, you should build the items in the top row. Okay, so if your game is going really well, you can build Ionian boots because first of all, it gives you CDR on your Q and the rest of your spells, and most importantly, it gives you summoner spell cooldown. So your flash and your smite are lower cooldown. And one of Lillia's most important spells is her flash. So Ionian Boots is always great if you're doing good and if the enemy team doesn't have a lot of threats. Now, if the enemy team has a lot of AD champions, especially AD champions that auto attack a lot, you should just build plated steel caps because it's one of the best armor items in the game and it's very cheap. And then on the other hand, if you are against heavy CC team comps, I think that Merc Treads is really strong because it gives you tenacity. However, just know that most of the time when you're building Merc Treads, you're building it to counter tenacity. You're not building it to counter AP champions because it only gives you like 25 magic resist. So if you're against a heavy AP team comp that doesn't have a lot of CC, I would still build Ionian Boots. And for the third item, you have Zhonya's as your most optimal item because it allows for the most outplays. It allows you to keep your shutdown safe if you're ahead, and it also provides armor. And it provides a lot of AP now with the new items. So Zhonya's is very good at snowballing the game and making sure that you can survive and do a lot of damage at the same time. Now, on the other hand, if you are also ahead and the enemy team has a lot of, spells like Morgana Q or some type of like the Hui Snare, something that will stun you and make it hard for you to walk in, then I think that Banshees is a great item. But remember, you have to be ahead. I think that Banshees is not very strong if you're behind. It's very strong when you're ahead because it also helps protect your shutdown because you have a spell shield. And it also is very good into heavy AP team comps. And then on the flip side, if you are against a team comp that has a lot of attack speed, for example, if you're playing against Xayah, Yasuo, and Yone or something like that, like if you have 2 to 3 champions that attack very fast and a lot of AD damage on the enemy team, then Frozen Heart can literally counter an entire team comp, and it only costs 2,500 gold. Because if you guys didn't know, Frozen Heart slows attack speed by a pretty significant amount, which is why I think that Frozen Heart is one of Lillia's best items, because to play Lillia, you have to kind of jump into the enemy team comp and be in their faces, which means that your Frozen Heart passive, which is an aura around you, will actually be active for most of the fight. Frozen Heart is one of my favorite items. I build it in literally like 40 to 50% of my games, so it's a very strong item. And then for your 4th item, if you're doing great and you're snowballing, just go Cosmic Drive, because Cosmic Drive gives you movement speed, ability haste, just lets you, and it gives you health, so it kind of helps the survivability, but most of all, it just makes you very fast, so you can farm even faster, you can pick people on the side lane very fast, and you can clear the enemy jungle before they can even get to it. So I think that Cosmic Drive is a excellent item if you are extremely far ahead, okay? And even it could even be better than Zanya's in some cases as your 3rd item, so you know, think about that. But most games, I don't think you're going to be building Cosmic Drive, because you can get much more value from items like Force of Nature or Jack Show. I think these items, like Force of Nature, makes you faster, just like Cosmic Drive. Not as fast, but it also gives you up to 110 or 120 magic resist, which is huge into heavy magic resist team comps. And it also gives you health. So it's just synergizes really well with your champion's playstyle, and it helps you survive in games where you need survivability. And then Jack Show is more of like, if you already have Frozen Heart and you already have Zanya's, if you have one of those 2 items and the enemy team comp is doing a little bit of magic damage, a little bit of AD damage, then you could just slot in a Jack Show there if you're feeling like you're too squishy, and it'll make your team fights much more stronger, and you can kind of just become incredibly tanky. And so if you're playing against a team comp where you kind of have to get in there and ult for your team and you have to survive, then I think Jack Show is a really good item. It's just a little expensive, which is the only problem, so you just have to keep that in mind. And then finally, for your 5th item, if you are having a perfect game, obviously just go Rabadons. It's one of the best AP items in the game. Gives you a ton of AP, and that's pretty much it. It gives you a ton of AP, but it's really strong. So if you're really far ahead and you're trying to close out the game, you need that final item, just go Rabadons. On the flip side though, if the enemy team is stacking MR because you are so fed, which this doesn't happen too often on Lillia, I don't really feel a need to build this item that often, but you can build Crypto Bloom because it gives you healing when you kill people, which is good for Lillia. And also, mainly, you do it for the magic penetration. So if you are trying to fight against a team comp that is stacking MR and you feel like you're not doing enough damage, you can build Crypto Bloom as your 5th item. You could potentially build it as your 4th item as well, but usually I would probably save it for 5th. And finally, if you are having a hard time against an AD team comp that is very melee focused, then you could build Unending Despair, because Unending Despair gives you armor, and it gives you healing, which drains from people around you. It's kind of like the old Jack Show, but it happens every like 7 seconds. So I think Unending Despair is a great item if you need to fight against like a heavy melee team comp. Like, you know, Yasuo, Jax, Renekton. If you have a ton of those type of champions, then Unending Despair can be great to help your survivability and help you beat those champions in a fight. But yeah, that's kind of my idea for the build right now. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. If you have any ideas for Lillia builds that I didn't really mention, and you can also mention it in the comments. If you want to talk to me or get coaching from me, you can join my Discord in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and like.